Hello and welcome to the AVRUM ROSENSWEIG show.
Welcome to one of the internet's best podcasts, where we dive deep into the lives of the extraordinary and fascinating people who leave an indelible mark on our world. Join us as we explore their captivating stories, remarkable achievements, and unique perspectives that shape history and inspire generations. Get ready to embark on a journey through the lives of inspiring people unlike any other.
Hi, folks, and welcome to the show. My name is indeed AVRUM ROSENSWEIG, and I'm delighted to be here with you. Thank you so much for joining me and my guest today, whom I will introduce shortly. But before I do that, I like to give a preface to the show and what we're trying to accomplish during our interview. I am absolutely amazed by the many, many people whom I have met through my work, my humanitarian work throughout a few decades, actually, who have survived extraordinarily difficult environments. I have hung out with Holocaust survivors. I've interviewed Rwandans who survived the genocide of 1994. I had a fellow who came and put drapes up in my house who was from Vietnam, and he remembers the bombing of Hanoi as a little boy and the difficulties of having to come back from massive destruction and the death of many, many neighbors. I'm really, really taken by how people manage to survive situations like that, but even more so come back from them and create a beautiful life for themselves. Not everybody who's traumatized, but many, many people. So in today's interview, which I'm doing with Ela Levgoren, how are you, Ella?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for doing the interview. I appreciate it a lot.
I appreciate being here. It means a lot.
Thank you. Thank you. Ella is a survivor of the Nova Music Festival from October 7th, 2023. And throughout the next hour or so, we are going to speak about what happened on that day, but even more so, what happened the day after and the day after that, and then what happened after the weeks and the months, and now 2 years later. What did she do to survive? What is she doing to make her life better? And more so, to make the life better of so many others. So, Ella, I'm going to introduce you formally, and here we go. Ella is a 24-year-old Israeli Canadian who transformed profound loss into a powerful narrative of hope. She was raised in Canada and boldly relocated to Israel at age 18 to enlist as a lone soldier in the IDF. Serving as a combat engineering instructor, she demonstrated remarkable resilience and command, qualities that proved vital in her darkest hours. On October 7th, 2023, Ella joined friends at the Nova Music Festival, anticipating a celebration of rhythm, unity, and joy. Tragically, the event descended into chaos during a savage Hamas terrorist assault, marking one of Israel's most harrowing days. As music gave way to the chaos of bullets, Ella and her companions battled for their lives. Amid the onslaught, she fled with four survivors, bearing physical injuries, deep emotional scars, and an indelible transformation. Heartbreakingly, Ella lost six of her dear friends on that day. 364 people were murdered at the Nova Music Festival, and 44 were taken hostage. In the wake of that horror, Ella has evolved beyond mere survival. She stands as an advocate for the voiceless, a beacon for those grappling with trauma shadows, and a testament to the boundless fortitude within all of us. She says that since then, she's been dedicating her energy and life to dig deeper into the world of PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder, and her personal healing journey. She has found outlet through art, music, therapy, community, and self reflective tools that help her cope, inspire, and aid both herself and others. How are you doing, Ella?
I'm good. I'm doing good.
You are
Um,
doing well?
yeah, it's like crazy hearing someone else say it, and I don't know, you think about everything you've gone through since. So it definitely takes me back for a second, but I feel that I'm doing good. Step by step. There's brighter days, there's darker days, but I think that's pretty much life, and it's part of it. And I'm happy to be on this journey.
Yes, and I want to thank you very much for sharing your journey with me and with so many others. Where we met was at the Nova Music Festival exhibit here in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, probably about 4 or 5 months ago. And you were asked to speak at the end of the tour that we were on, which included many items from the music festival itself, including burned out cars. And I have to tell you something, you were magnificent. Magnificent. I talked and I go,
Yeah.
you know, what? I don't think you said one and as orators, because orators, uh, I was just amazed. I just said an But you
I
were
say them too. I'm surprised you missed them. I'm sure I said them. It's just like the time for me to think before my next word comes out.
right, right. I get it. I get it. But you were so strong up there, and you articulated your message so clearly. And I think you probably spoke for what, half hour, maybe a bit longer, and people were mesmerized by your presentation and by your story. Uh, was that a tough thing for you? Was that your first time around?
Wow. I don't know if tough is the word. I think it was a lot for sure. It was my first time publicly speaking in such a forum about my October 7th story, about my healing journey. And I think every time I got on stage, there was this kind of flow. I felt really good. I felt very much where I needed to be in the moment. And I think only after, each time after I got off the stage and once I met everyone and I saw how many people it touched and kind of the ripple effect it created, that's when it would hit me what it is that I'm actually doing. And it brought up a lot of emotions, obviously difficult ones. It's not an easy thing to relive your traumas, let alone to share them with people who, aren't necessarily people in such a forum. But at the same time, I think it was something that for me in my healing journey, I waited a very long time to get to the point with myself where I could and felt that I wanted to and was able to share my story. Uh, and that was a big, big win for me. So I felt very inspired. I felt very touched. I felt very loved, for sure. And it was very big for me. I think I'm still processing it, to be honest.
No, you did really, really well. And I'm not saying that just to be nice.
Thank
Honestly,
you.
I hadn't met you previously, but I was so deeply proud of you because of your accomplishments on stage that day and the effect that you had on so many people. Who I've spoken to many of my friends afterwards who were in attendance then or and other times that you had spoken, and they were just really taken by you. So as they say in Yiddish, "Yisher koach." Well done.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
and
That
I'll
means
tell
a
you the
lot.
Oh, absolutely, Ella. The thing that really took me as well is I'm a father of a 19-year-old. Um, your mom was there when you spoke. Now, your parents are really interesting folk because they're Israeli. They now live in Dundas, Ontario, right? Which is not far from Toronto. But your
Yeah.
mother was there, and more than wanting to know how you were doing after you spoke, I wanted to know how your mom was doing because the idea
Wow.
that she has a daughter who went through the Nova Music Festival terrorist attack and then came to Toronto to speak about it in front of many people. As a parent, I sort of identified insofar as, oh man, I'm so scared for my child. How was your mom throughout all that?
Wow. My mom is my world, first of all. It meant so much that she was there. And she came to every single one of my speeches and stood and filmed and then stayed afterwards. And it was so, so comforting to have her there. I can tell you that, I've always been very independent. And because of the time difference and the fact that I live in Israel and they live in Canada, I usually tell them things in retrospect. Like there's very little in my life that they get to be a part of in real time.
It's wise.
And yeah, so even the Nova Festival, they didn't know that I was there. They only found out later when I called them, and I kind of didn't I wasn't even in the headspace myself to kind of run to them for comfort and like get that emotional hug, because the physical one, I couldn't see them. And so I can tell you that when she was with me at the exhibition, I remember the very first speech I did. I got off stage and then she came up to me and we both just started crying. And my mom, I I barely see her cry, but I remember that she kind of told me in that moment that this was a full circle moment for her, more than I could ever know, because she's kind of had to face all the pain. You know how they say as a parent, I'm sure it's like everything your child feels, you feel even more. When they're happy, you're happy. When they're sad, everything inside you hurts. And I know how much my parents, faced a lot of difficulties this year, their own, and also the ones that I was facing, that they kind of took upon themselves. And I think it was a really, really monumental moment for both of us, because it was the first time in these 2 years where my mom was a part of something that I did and experienced in real time for the first time, and that she was there with me in that moment. The first time I stood up on a stage and spoke, and she kind of said, you're saying things that I didn't even know until now. And I think that hit me really hard, kind of understanding, as much as I think I tell her so many things, maybe even subconsciously I leave, certain details out, or I don't always show how much I'm in pain or how much I'm going through. I kind of summarize it into a little sugar coated sentence or a title. And this was a very, very unfiltered, raw, emotional moment for me and for her. And I think that in itself was probably one of the most significant things I took from this experience, was kind of having a chance to feel like a kid and lean on my mom and kind of give myself that, after not really being able to the way I would have wanted to, in these past years. So,
So you escape the Nova Music Festival terrorist attack, and we'll get into that in a moment. You get home, and shortly afterwards, you called your parents. What was their response physically? Did they come to Israel to be with you?
so yeah, when I called my dad, I called him very much when I was kind of in my survival mode. I called him not to let him know I'm okay, but more so to ask for his help, because we were searching for our friends. And I wanted to see if he had any contacts, people from his military service, anyone he could get me in touch with. And so, I kind of called him all frantic, and I was like, Dad, I was at this festival. I'm fine. I need your help. I need you to get me this and this and this person. And kind of just, said so many things. I think he was just waking up, because this had happened. It was middle of the night in Canada, and things happened in Israel. And I know that he did not tell my mother right away. He kind of wanted her to have a second to wake up. He like took her phone. He was like, sit down. We need to have a talk before you check your phone. And yeah, obviously, it's very scary, because they had the comfort of hearing from me after the fact. But then when it hits them and they see everything on the news and they realize where I had just been hours prior, it's kind of, even though they know I'm okay, it's like their body and everything they're feeling inside, it doesn't register that everything's okay. And she's after the fact, it kind of feels like, everything's hitting you at once. And I know it was very, very hard for them. I can only imagine. And my dad did end up flying to Israel, but it took a little bit, almost a week and a half after, just because, there was a lot of problems with flights. It was very difficult for people to get in and out of Israel during those first few days that the war broke out. But he did everything in his power, and he managed to come and be with us as soon as he was able to get here. And that, for sure was something I needed desperately. Um, it was a very touching moment, when I saw him for the first time. And I think that was one of the few moments I let myself fully feel in those few days. And I just hugged him for a very long time and let everything out. And yeah, it was hard. It was a very difficult time for all of us.
Do you remember what you said to him or what he said to you?
I don't know if I said much. I think I mainly trying to catch my breath, and I cried a lot. Um, and he didn't say much either. I think my dad and I have a really beautiful way of communicating. I'm able to read him really well. He's able to read me, and he knows, that sometimes there's moments where there's no amount of words that will, change anything or make anything feel better. I kind of just needed him to, hold me, uh, to feel his presence, and that's exactly what he did. And we got to the talking stages obviously after, but it was just I remember I was like sitting by the beach, and he came up to like the rocks where I was sitting with my sisters, and it felt like this movie scene where I just like noticed him and I ran to him, and we had this really beautiful embrace. And I didn't realize how much I needed my parents until that moment, I think.
Yes. Was there a
Yeah.
point where you just couldn't cry anymore?
Oh, for sure. I think it comes and goes in waves. uh Sometimes you feel so many emotions to the point where it's scary. It's scary. It's like my system's shut down. And then I kind of become a little bit numb, you can say. And I think that that's something I've learned over the last year and a half, to be very much in tune with my body, mind, and soul connections. Kind of listen to my body when it wants to let something out and not hold back.
Yes.
But if there's moments where I feel like, maybe I think I should be crying right now, or I should be feeling some type of way, but something in me is not allowing me to, I try not to fight it so much. I try to kind of just be my own friend in the moment, uh, and listen to what I need. And that comes about in different ways every single time. But there's definitely moments where all I did was cry, and then there's other moments um, where I just couldn't. I kind of had to switch something off in order to be able to, survive the day.
Do you
And it's a
remember when?
process.
Do you remember when you started to laugh again?
It's interesting. I think, something with trauma that I've come to realize is a lot of times, uh, it takes us a long time to actually let it in. And so a lot of times, actually, at the start, it's much easier to, our brain isn't processing what we just went through, what we just witnessed, what is actually happening. And so it's very, very easy to fall into, I want to say distractions, but not in a negative form, in a good form. Community was something that we had from the moment everything happened. I went to a lot of safe houses with other Nova survivors, where we would sit and we would have a variety of things we could turn to, whether it was therapists, whether it was, little art workshops, music, dance, bubbles, fun games, food, nature around us. And so it was really easy. Um, I actually laughed and smiled a lot in the first few weeks, because I felt like everyone that I surrounded myself with were also in the exact same position I was. And all of us kind of knew deep down that, we're laughing at a joke right now, we're smiling right now, we're dancing to the song, but none of us feel alive right now. And it was kind of this unspoken understanding, which made it a lot easier to not judge yourself for how you were reacting, and not try to kind of nitpick at it and try to understand, why did I smile today? Why didn't I cry? Why did I wake up with an appetite today, but yesterday I wasn't? It was kind of something where you just let it be, because you understood that there's something much bigger than you happening to you right now. And I truly do believe that it's a puzzle that you put together. You can't process everything like what we experienced in just, one session and it's done. So I think genuine joy, I did not feel for a very long time. Um, but I definitely aimed for it. Like everything in me was fighting to keep that smile and to stay Ella that I knew. And it did feel like a fake it until you make it type of situation for sure. Um,
Well, it was interesting when I was doing research for this interview. There was a young man who was on a BBC documentary, and I'll come up with his name later. And he said, since October 7th, I'm not quite sure who I am. I know that I'm different, and I know I'll never be the same. And I'm working on trying to figure out who I'm going to be. Does that resonate?
for sure. For sure. I think that you can't go through something like this and stay the same. I also don't believe that there is such a thing as the same. I think we're always growing and evolving and changing. I can tell you that even before, October 7th, I couldn't, if someone asked me that simple question of, who is Ella? I couldn't answer it because I'm relearning, rediscovering, reinventing myself every single day. And I think if anything, I've realized a lot more about the core of who I am today through this experience, because that's when the hard truths between you and yourself actually come out, when you kind of stop the outside distractions and you just sit and you listen and you just be with yourself, and you get a lot of answers from that uncomfortable silence with yourself. And so I definitely think I'm not the same as I was, but I don't see it as a bad thing, um, because I'm closer to who I want to be, if that makes sense.
Yes, of course. Ella, October 7th was October 6th and 7th was a great big music festival, which was replicating other festivals around the world, more specifically one in Brazil. It was attended by more than 3,500 people. And according to those who were in attendance, it was absolutely magnificent, of course, until it wasn't. One thing I learned again from my research was the music that they played is called trans music. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, it's short for transformative
Yeah.
music.
So you can see
Yeah.
how old I am. But I tell you something, I would go to such a music festival. I really would. Because it seems like everybody there was so beautiful, was so inspired, was so full of life, and actually was very high too. There were an awful lot of drugs there, which was a problem later on for people who were trying to escape. What I would like to do is read you a poem that was produced by AI about the Nova Festival itself. And then I want to ask you about that day, the friends whom you lost, and then we're going to move into your recovery since then. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is for you. This is a poem about the day. Beneath the desert sky where stars align, the Nova tribe dance, their spirits entwine. Drums pulse like heartbeats, a rhythm of peace. In the glow of dawn, all worries released. Shanty, they whispered in colors so bright. Sai Baba lingered soft in the night. A canvas of freedom, of love's open call, a fleeting utopia embracing them all. But at 6:29, the music was stilled. The air turned to ash with terror instilled. The joy of the moment, a memory torn, a festival of light in darkness reborn. Cries pierced the silence where laughter once soared, yet heroes emerged, their courage restored. Anir threw back grenades, Ben drove through the fray. Romy's small voice asked, are you here to save? In the groves and the dust they hid, they ran, clutching hope's thread in a shattering plan. The shoes left behind like echoes of pain speaks of lives lost, yet a vow remains. We will dance again, the survivors declare. Their timbrels will rise through the weight of despair. From grief's heavy shadow, a promise takes flight to honor the fallen, to seek out the light. For Nova was more than a moment's embrace, it's a spirit unbroken, a radiant grace. Those scars tell the story of that fateful morn. In the heart of the tribe, new dreams will be born. That's for
Oh,
you. And that's for the
it's
six
beautiful.
friends that you lost on that day. Five of
Thank
them
you.
are in a picture above you. We will be posting Gili Adar, who was your best friend, at the top of this interview when people watch it. What happened on that day, Ella?
Where do we start? um, so I can tell you just a little bit of context. For me, this festival, it was something I was really looking forward to because I had spent that entire year prior traveling in South America. I went
Mm.
on a backpacking trip and I
By
solo
yourself.
traveled.
By yourself.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
actually started with my best friend from high school from Canada. And she came with me for 2 months and then she went back to Canada and I continued solo and it was amazing. I ended up traveling for 10 months. And, one of the best things about this experience is you experience so much euphoria every single day on your trip. You feel like you're like born every day, like everything's possible, and you meet amazing people. And I remember one of the things that I was most excited for to return to Israel was the fact that I would have now so many Israeli friends to be able to start my life in Israel, but feel like truly Israeli
Mhm.
because, I am Israeli, but I came through a program with other lone soldiers and other people who made Aliyah. And so my surrounding was very much, people from America, from Canada, from Europe, and I didn't really have too many Israeli friends. And so I gained, a really big family of friends, which was amazing. And I started getting into the whole scene of the transformative music nature parties that we would have in Peru and in other destinations in South America. And so when I heard about the Nova Festival, I was so excited because it was going to be my first, real party in Israel, real festival. And I knew that I had at least, maybe I'm exaggerating, but it felt like I knew at least like 200, 300 people there because it was like this unspoken vibe of, everyone who just returned from the backpacking trips in South America, like we're all reuniting at this event.
Yeah.
And it was talked about months before I even bought my ticket, before I even, came back. And I kind of knew that I had plans in October to fly abroad again for a year or so. And so I knew I was taking this opportunity to see all my friends and to kind of say bye to everyone and have this little fun reunion at the festival before I would leave again. A week later, I was supposed to fly. Um, and so I arrived, and I arrived with a friend of mine, and I had many friends there, but we kind of put together our little campsite. We were about 20, 22 friends. We were a big friend group who traveled with me in Peru. And I remember, just like you said, when we got there, everything kind of felt magical in the air. It was, many people say it was one of the best parties and festivals they had been to, obviously, until everything happened. And I remember kind of feeling super, super alive, super excited. I would walk in every, few meters. I couldn't even walk, a few steps without someone stopping me, seeing someone I hadn't seen in a while, and everyone's smiling and hugging and jumping. And the music was amazing, and everything just felt very meant to be. And I remember, I have this tendency to take a lot of pictures, always make sure everyone is having fun, kind of, look for my friends. I don't want to miss the moment. I have big FOMO, or at least I used to. And that was something that I kind of remember at the festival. I felt it play. Like every time I was sitting with a friend catching up, I was thinking, oh, but I'm missing this set and this track and
Mhm.
this friend. And how am I going to see and do everything? And I just kind of remembered I would tell myself, you know what, this is like a 2-day festival. It was supposed to end Saturday night. So I kind of felt good because I was like, okay, if I plan my time right, I'll manage to do everything and see everyone. And there was this moment where I was kind of at my peak. I was dancing with my friends, having fun. And a lot of times I kind of get lost in the music. I like to kind of adventure on my own as well and kind of take some moments with myself. And I remember I saw that the sun was starting to rise. And sunrise is known to be, one of the peak moments at
Yes.
the festival because it's when you feel the most connection to nature and magical, and suddenly you start seeing people's faces because there's light out, and,
Right,
and
right.
it's
People say all of a sudden I can see who I was
yeah,
talking
who
to
was
last night.
next to me, yeah,
Yeah,
who
who was
I was
next to me,
hugging
right.
this whole
Right,
time.
right.
And it's a beautiful moment. And I thought, I kind of assumed, of course, I would be with all my friends like in this moment. And I remember when I was on the dance floor and I saw the sun, starting to rise, and I realized I lost my friends. And I kind of said, okay, okay, wait, but like, you can't be alone for this moment. This is like the moment. And I wanted to look for them. But then something in me kind of said, you know what? Maybe this is what it means to be in the moment. If you go now and you spend your energy trying to find them, you're taking away from everything that your body is signaling for you to experience in the here and now with yourself. And I kind of made a decision that it's not like me, to kind of know, you know what? If my friends aren't near me, I'm not going to go looking for them. Like, I want to give this moment to myself. And I stayed put. And I remember I was dancing, on the dance floor, obviously with people around me, but I wasn't sure who. I kind of closed my eyes and went into my own little euphoric world. And, I remember I had this really, really powerful moment with myself, and I kind of got carried away into the music. And I look up, and as soon as I look up, I see fireworks in the sky. And I was like, wow, maybe this is God saying, Ella, I'm giving you this moment. Like, you should be happy you stayed with yourself. And I'm looking and I'm mesmerized. And then it was like in a split second, everything stops. The music suddenly stops. And I see the DJ, is talking to one of the security guys. And then they suddenly say, red alert, red alert. Like, the festival's over, go find shelter. There's sirens, there's rockets. You guys have to go find a safe place. And it kind of like took me a second. I was kind of still in my spot. And then it hit me, Ella, those weren't fireworks. Like, these are rockets over your head. And that realization really messed me up for a second. How can I think something and then realize it's the complete opposite of peace? And I just remember I kind of froze in place because a lot of things were going through my head. I didn't really realize if this was serious. Unfortunately, the area where the festival was, it's near the Gaza border in the south. And when I moved to Israel, that's where I lived. I lived in Kibbutz Urim. And this is something they deal with on a daily basis, rockets and sirens, and they rarely have, freedom and peace of mind. And so I kind of assumed this was just like any other day, shitty situation, but this is protocol. They have to stop the music. They have to tell people to go find shelter because this is an open space and there were no bomb shelters, or any kind of protection there. So people physically, had to get in their cars and leave the premises and try to find the nearest village or the nearest bomb shelter, which, there are spread out on the sides of the roads near the bus stops. And I kind of assumed in my head that this would be, 10-20 minutes of this, and then things would calm down and the music would keep on playing and everything would go back to normal. And, as we know now, that's not what it was at all. And I remember a friend kind of bumped into me when I was alone on the dance floor in that moment. And I hadn't seen him. I didn't realize he flew back from his trip. He surprised everyone at the festival. And, we had this moment of a hug, and I was even smiling because I still wasn't really processing what's going on. And I told him, everyone's going to want to see you. And we ended up running to our campsite to kind of touch base with our friends. And I remember this was kind of a moment where I looked around me and I realized I felt like the festival kind of split into two types of energy. There were the people that were already very, very much panicky, freaking out, crying, having anxiety attacks, kind of chaos all over the place, people running and just a mess all around you. And then there were the people that, were more kind of saying things are going to be fine. This is 10-20 minutes. The music will come back on. They were more upset that the situation was happening and that the music stopped and that they had to kind of, get out of the vibe they were in. Because again, at these moments, we hadn't realized that there was a terrorist invasion. We didn't know what was going on simultaneously in the villages and in the roads around us. All we knew was that there was sirens, rockets, and that we had to go hide. And, we kind of start packing up our campsite. And I remember, typical me, very spontaneous. I don't really plan ahead. And I did not want to commit to when and who I was going back home with. So I kind of did not figure, like, I didn't plan ahead. And so in that moment, I kind of found myself running in between, a bunch of different friends in different campsites and trying to see who had space in their car. And I remember our vibe was more, let's just get out of this area. And we'll go to Tel Aviv, we'll go to the beach, we'll do an after party there. Everything's gonna be fine. But like, let's, everyone get your shit together and let's get out of here.
Mhm.
And I remember, after I was kind of running back and forth, one of my friends, Karen, he said to me, Ella, I have space in my car. Come with us. Like, let's get going. Because everyone kind of knew that we were headed for a very big traffic jam, because you have, almost 4,000 people trying to get out with their cars at once on this one road. And so obviously that in itself, like any traffic jam, when someone is in a rush, is going to cause a lot of chaos. And I remember, I put my things in the car and we kind of got in the car and we're getting ready to leave. And we, game plan to go to Tel Aviv. And then I get a call from Gili. And Gili Adar, she was one of my best friends from my trip in South America. We met the very first week and we kind of had this sister bond where I kept seeing her throughout my trip and we had these beautiful moments together. And she was one of the friendships I knew would just, peak the moment we got back to Israel and would kind of stay for life. And I had not seen her yet. And she was one of the people that I really came to see her. We had tried to meet up that whole week and it kind of fell through every time. And I knew that no matter what, I was getting a dance on the dance floor with her, no question. And so she calls me and I pick up and she says, where are you? And I said, listen, like I'm with these friends. We're just getting in the car. We want to go find, a bomb shelter until this calms down and we figure out what to do. And she said, no, 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 no. Listen, don't go, don't go. Come here. Like, I'm waiting for you. We're by this tree. AVRUM and I and a bunch of our friends, everyone's waiting to see you. And we're doing a little picnic. She was like, come back home with me. Things are going to calm down in like 10 minutes. We'll go back and dance. I can't let you leave without seeing you. And it was very tempting. And so in my mind, I was like, of course, I'm going to go find her and be with her. And I remember, I hung up the phone and I came to leave the car and let my friends know, go without me. I'll go meet Gili. And that was the first moment that I think there was a shift between, Ella's conscious mind and my gut and my body. And my body kind of took over. And I can't stress this enough. Like, nothing about this makes sense in words, but I physically tried to open the door and I could not get out of the car. It was as if my body just went numb. I felt almost paralyzed. Everything in my head is screaming, open the door, go. And my body is just not letting me move. And I remember I felt so frustrated. I kind of felt like, am I getting sick? Like, I don't know what's happening to me. But I knew my friends wanted to leave and I kind of didn't want to be the reason I'm holding everybody up. Because again, this is all happening while there's, nonstop rockets flying above us.
Yes.
And so something in me just couldn't get out of the car. And I called Gili again after a few minutes and I said, listen, I can't really explain it. Can't get out of the car. I don't want to hold anyone up, but let's talk in 20 minutes. If things calm down, we'll make our way back to you. Like, send me your location. And if things don't calm down, then make your way towards Tel Aviv and we'll pick a beach and, we'll meet there. And she said, okay, sounds good. Perfect. Like, we'll update soon. And, that's when kind of we were a car of 5 people. And that's when we kind of started our journey out of the premises. And this was around 7:10. So we had been there, since the music stopped at 6:29 until 7:10. So we had about 45 minutes that we were there. And I remember we start driving and, we see this traffic jam that's already formed. And Corinne, my friend who was driving, kind of said, we can't be sitting ducks here. We'll be stuck here for hours. Everything is chaos. We need to find a way to kind of cut through the traffic and just go. And, we put in the quickest way to get to Tel Aviv. It said through Sderot, which is a city. that was on the way. And we get in the car and we start driving. And we did just that. We kind of cut through, a side road very, very fast, managed to kind of butt everyone in line and keep driving. And when we drove and we passed, Reim and Berry. And I remember Karan drove very, very, very quick. And everything is very fumbled from all of those moments. But I remember that when we drove, as we were passing, we saw that there were so many cars that were wrecked on the side of the road and that people were on the ground, with their faces down. And, the windows were broken and doors left open. And, you kind of do one plus one in your head logical thing. I thought either people, were under the influence, were driving, kind of got in little accidents, or they decided to get out of the cars and lie down on the ground because it's known protocol that if there's a rocket alert and you're in the car, you got to stop the car on the side of the road and kind of get down as close to the ground, put your hands over your head. And that was what my mind interpreted what I was seeing as in that very second. And, we passed that area very, very quick. Um, Only later did I realize that these were dead bodies that we saw. Um, I don't know how long they had been there. I don't know what was happening in the moments when we were still dancing, before word got out to everyone that was at the party, at the festival. And it's a very, very haunting feeling and image that is always stuck in my head, especially when you kind of realize that it's not what you thought, kind of like the same feeling I had with the fireworks, where, it's not, I don't feel stupid, but almost blindsided by myself that I interpreted one thing and in reality it was completely something else. And I remember we kept driving and it felt to me like we almost entered like an alternate universe. I felt like we were the only car in the road. We didn't really have anyone around us to kind of have a mirror of what was happening. And as we're driving, we're in touch with all our other friends because we had to split off into different cars. And you start getting messages from everyone in the group and you have service going in and out. And we suddenly hear and see in the group that people are saying, someone's been shot and there's terrorists. The word terrorist started going around in texts. And you don't really understand what that means. Is it one terrorist, two, three? Where are they? What is going on? Where's the army? Where's the military? You kind of expect them to be on top of it. And I just remember that as we were driving, my body kind of kept playing games with me the whole time. And I actually ended up kind of losing consciousness, fainting, you could say. Two or three times this happened during our drive where I would physically just shut down. And after a few seconds or minutes, would wake up. And my friends in the car said, Ella, drink water. You're passing out. Like, are you sick? Are you okay? Are you dehydrated? And I was like, fully unaware that this was happening to me. I kind of felt at the peak of my energy when we had left, and I said, "I didn't pass out," and they said, "You just did. It just happened." And that's kind of where I started freaking out again about my body. I was like, "This is not the time for my body to start acting up. I don't know what's going on." Looking back, I definitely understand that it's what saved me. I definitely think my body and my subconscious knew things that I couldn't comprehend at the time. And kind of the way you have fight, flight, freeze mode, I kind of had fatigue mode, faint mode, you could call it, where it was just my systems shutting down, almost protecting me from things that knowing myself, I don't know that I would be here if those things hadn't happened, if I had seen what I wasn't meant to see, or if I understood what I was seeing. Um, and so I think my body definitely took a very, very big, big part in what saved me. Even though at the time I wasn't aware or thankful for it. And I remember one of the moments, when I woke up again from one of my little faints, I don't know what it was, but something in me kind of just said, we have to stop the car. I felt like we just had to stop right here, right now, could not keep driving. And I said that to my friends and I said, we have to stop. We have to go into a bomb shelter. We can't keep driving in this open road. We're so far from anywhere central and we see the rockets all around us. And I just felt like something in me was saying, stop the car right now. And my friends listened. I said it a few times. I was very adamant about it, which is also very not like me. I tend not to always kind of be assertive or show too much dominance. I kind of go with the flow. But something in me wasn't, letting it pass. And I remember Karan stopped the car. We stopped in the closest bomb shelter we could find, which was outside of a kibbutz called Sad. And the kibbutz itself, the gates were locked. We couldn't get in, but there was a bomb shelter right outside of the gate. And we entered it, and it was just the five of us. Keep in mind, again, at least for me, maybe they did, but I genuinely do not remember seeing cars around us. It felt like very much like it was just us. And that was something that kept going through my head. Like, where is everyone else? Like, are we the only ones? Like, why are we the only ones on this road? And I remember we got into the bomb shelter, and again, at this time, we're communicating with all our friends, and there's more and more things coming out. We're already realizing at this point that something bigger is going on. These aren't just rockets. Something is not okay, and we are not in a safe area. And I remember we were in there for, I want to say, 5 minutes, not even, because while we were in there, uh, while getting the text, we also could hear, alongside all of the rockets and the bombs, we heard a lot of rifles. And I remember we kept hearing them, and everything kind of collided like a musical arrangement almost of just terror, where you don't even know to recognize what it is you're hearing. Um, we heard various, like just automatic rifles, and you don't know, is this uh, you know, terrorists? Is this the army? In the army, it's known that you never use the automatic rifle setting. So if it's not the army, should we be leaving where we are right now? Because we hear it coming closer to us. Um, and you don't really know what to think, and you don't know to trust your gut or your instincts or what you're seeing, or everything is very confusing. And I remember that's when I felt scared, like actually very scared for the first time. Um, And I remember we decided to we all looked at each other. We were like, let's go back in the car and continue towards the road. Same game plan we had before. Let's just get out of this general southern area as quick as possible, because nothing feels safe, not even the shelters right now. You don't really know what your threat is and where it's coming from. And I remember we all get in the car and we start driving, back on the road towards the road. And probably a few meters in, we start our drive and this car comes and passes us, and this man rolls the window down and he looks frantic and he just says to us, do not go to Sderot, do not go to Sderot, go back to the party, go back to, like, make a U-turn, go back to where you came from, just do not continue down this road to Sderot. And he just drove away. And it was a very confusing moment because he didn't give us the why. And we were in that moment, at a literal, intersection where we had to make a decision which road we are taking. Um, in retrospect, if we had decided to ignore him, which was something we thought about, let's just keep going how we planned. If we had gone towards Derot, we would have been dead in minutes. At this point, the terrorists were already making their way. They took over Sderot and they were making their way up that road towards us. And if we had listened to him and gone back, towards the party and the road we came from, we also would have been dead or could have been dead in minutes because at this time they had already taken over that entire road area. So you have a situation where they're coming from both directions and from the villages that they had already taken over. And they kind of stumbled upon everyone leaving the festival. So it was this bait of, just thousands of people with nowhere to go, but they had nowhere to run. And for some reason, we chose, the third route out, which was this other road that led to a different city called Netivot. which would eventually lead us onto the highway and into a safer zone. And I don't know why that's what we chose, and that's the decision we made, and that's what ended up saving us, along every single one of the moments leading up to it, because you don't know until way after. Even today, it took so many months to get facts and a bigger idea of what was going on at exactly what minute, where we were. Today, I know things I didn't know then. And then I had thought that it was like a cat and mouse chase, and I was very lucky, and I just missed the terrorists by a minute or two. In retrospect, we didn't miss them. They were with us the entire time. There is a very good chance, I don't doubt that they saw us. I don't doubt that they even maybe shot at us. I don't know why, for some reason, it was as if we were the ones who were unaware. And maybe that ignorance, in a way, was what saved us, that we weren't seeing what was happening around us. But factually, putting together all the pieces, sources from the military as well, from other people who were in the areas at the time, from footages we've seen in videos, they were very much with us at every point in that span of time, from the minute we left at 7:10, and until after we left the bomb shelter. And that's a very wild thought, to think about. And I kind of remember that when we kept driving and we felt like we were in a safer place, each one of us is kind of texting their friends and family, and I'm getting texts from my sisters and my cousins, where are you? Are you safe? You're in the South. Get out of there. There's a terrorist attack. It's like they're letting me know what is happening to me, because we don't have you only see what you're seeing, and they're seeing things from the house, from the news, things that we don't have the information in front of us to see it.
Yeah.
And so you get all these peeps of information from the outside, and you don't really know what to do, because all you're doing is escaping. And I remember, I kind of said, "Oh my God, we need to call the police. We need to let someone know." Like, I called, very naively, thinking maybe I'm like one of the first people to let them know that this is going on. And I remember we're calling, and there's no one answering on the other line, or people pick up, hang up, pick up, hang up. And when finally I get someone on the other side, they say, we know all of Israel is under attack. There is a terrorist invasion. You need to tell your friends to stay safe. You need to hide. Do not share your locations, because there's also a cyber attack. You guys need to pray and stay safe. Everyone knows. The military knows. The police know. Physically, no one can come get you. You just need to wait. And I think that was a horrific thing to understand. What is everyone aware of that all of us in the moment aren't aware of? They are way more aware that there's thousands of terrorists. This isn't one or two or even 10. And they're aware that we're kind of, there's no escape zone. And I remember, we kind of, once we got somewhere safer, we kept trying to reach out, kind of get an idea of where our friends are, so when we do get someone on the line, we could get them help. And I remember around 8:50, we were in the car, and I thought about Gili. And I was like, "Oh, shit, what is up with her?" We said we would update. I forgot to let her know. I'm gonna call her, and I'm sure she's already on the way home. Like, she's probably already safe. And I remember I called her, and she picked up the phone, and this was probably, one of those things that when you have moments that kind of come back to you in your nightmares, this is it for me. She picked up the phone, and I just hear her on the other line, and she just says, "Ella, I can't talk. I can't talk. They're running after me. I see them. They're coming. They're coming. I have to hide. I have to hide. I can't talk. I have to run." And I hear in the background screams and noises, and I hear the gunshots, and I hear her breathing and running, and I hear her fear. And I don't even have the words to respond to what she's saying. It was so quick, um, where I couldn't even form the word, and she just hung up. And I think that was the first, real moment it hit me. And I realized, not everyone is like us. Like, not everyone is in a safer area. Like I thought there's people in it right now. Gili was this it? Like, was this the last call? Like, do I call her back? What do I do? I felt so helpless. I wanted to throw up. It was a terrible, terrible call. And I remember I just, I didn't want to waste her battery, and I started texting her just saying, "I love you. I'm here with you. Don't worry. They know, like everyone knows they're coming to save you guys. Like I'm here, and everything's gonna be okay, and you guys are strong." And I assumed she was with AVRUM too at the time, and I just remember that, she wasn't answering my texts, and I kind of figured, she's saving battery. And then suddenly a bunch of the texts I had sent were not delivering. I only saw one check mark. And I just said whatever I could in the moment to myself. Her phone died. She's preserving battery. It's on airplane mode. Um, she did not survive. And, later, when I talked to her parents, I realized I was one of her last calls. And it's a terrible feeling, to not understand, why did she pick up? Was she wanting to see that I was okay? Was she asking me to save her? What I would have said if I could have said something, um, how did this happen? Like I really, really could not let that moment go for a long time. I still haven't, but I felt a lot of guilt, a lot. And when we finally got to Karen's house, we ended up escaping, all the way to his house, because we realized that all of Israel was under attack. This wasn't, there's no going to the beach right now. Everyone all over Israel, from south to north, is in their shelters right now, and there's nonstop rockets for hours. And I remember we get to his house, and we had managed to get to his house, which is much further up north, than from where we were, in a very short amount of time, because the roads were so empty, and we just drove, 160 kilometers per hour. And so our entire, this whole escape story I'm telling you right now, by, I think, I want to say around 10, we were already at his house, which is insane. And I remember we enter his house, and his parents kind of hug us all, and they made us food, and we go to the living room, and the TV is on, and you see on the TV, you know, the Nova Festival massacre, thousands of people running, hiding for their lives, thousands of terrorists invaded Israel, Israel under attack, people from the festival, and it's footage and everything on the news. And I could not comprehend that I am looking at this from the safety of a home through a screen. I was just there. Why am I here? What am I doing here? How the hell are none of my friends telling me that they're also home? And what is happening? I couldn't, we couldn't digest it. It was impossible. It's not something you can comprehend. Um, and I think that, from that moment, that's kind of when I went into my automatic hero complex survival mode, putting out fire modes, where I, didn't even let myself kind of breathe for air. I kind of right away just went into, like, I have to save everyone I can. I have to contact whoever I can. That was the first moment I called my dad. It was probably 11 something, from Karen's house, telling him, Gili is stuck, and this person is stuck, and this person, I need your help. And that was kind of a spiral that went on and on. And, I'll touch on, like, the days after in a second. I'm just going to catch my breath for a minute.
Yes,
I
please.
said a lot. Um,
You're articulating your memories and your story very well, Ella.
Thank you. I smile a lot too. I know I do that when I talk, but I'm obviously not. Uh, it's not a smile out of joy. I think it's more disbelief. Um, as well as, you see this, and, like, I remember, I'm like, who's gonna believe this? Like, this feels like a Black Mirror episode. It's what it felt like the first, few moments.
Well, what's fascinating about the festival and how people responded is that many people filmed what was going on. And again, in one of the documentaries that I watched, a young man who rescued a single mother, and he stayed with her for 4 or 5 hours, holding her hand, never letting go. He specifically said, I'm going to film what's going on because I want people to see it, and I don't want anybody to deny this. It's very real, and I am going to produce footage to let people know that.
Yeah, so that's Ben. He was actually the friend that I bumped into on the dance floor. The friend I said that he
Special
filmed,
person.
he took a video, and I in the video you see me also smiling, and he says, we're here at the festival, everyone
Yes.
is freaking out. It was this shock, and that's something that I don't know why I didn't film in the moment. I think it's so important that people who did and were able to catch, the real life moments of their escape, of the things happening around them. And, it's kind of all we had later to put this puzzle piece of a day together and help each other kind of find the missing pieces in each other's stories. And I remember as soon after we were at Karan's house, after a few hours, his parents dropped each one of us off, somewhere because we had to go home. I didn't have anywhere to go back to because I lived in the South and I had just finished a sublet that, this on October 6th. I had packed all my things and I told my friend who I was subletting at his house, I'm gonna come back Saturday night from this festival and I'll take all my things. And they stayed there for 2 weeks at least, I think. But I remember my uncle luckily lived very close to Karan's house, and so they dropped me off there. And he came out, to get me, and I got out of the car and he hugged me. And I remember that was like the first moment I cried. That was the first cry. There's like something in his hug was very strong, and it wasn't in a good way. It was in a way of like something bad just happened. Something bad, bad, bad is happening. And it was like he held me like I remember I'm never gonna forget like this hug. And that was kind of all my systems, I just broke down. And those first few days right after, I started getting messages from friends who managed to escape and who were able to get back home. Around Saturday night, we kind of were all updating each other. And I had some friends that I wasn't hearing back from. And I remember I kind of, again, went into this survival mode of just looking at Telegram, like every video, atrocious videos, at the start, Hamas posted, footage that they themselves took of the atrocities that they were committing, and they posted it for the world to see. It wasn't a secret. It was like a flex. It was like, watch this. Nothing was censored. Um, it is things that you can't erase from your mind. And I remember, I'm a very sensitive person. I tried not to look if I didn't have to, but I was so desperate to find my friends that I kind of said, I have to look and I have to kind of put away my emotions for a second and just try to see if I recognize their bodies, if I recognize their hair, their clothes, whatever it is. And I kind of frantically would sit and look, and I was constantly on Instagram, on the news, posting stories, contacting all their parents, giving everyone any piece of information I had, when I saw them last at the festival, where I saw them, who I think they were with, getting phone numbers. I kind of was in this survival, putting out fire modes for days. And I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping, I could not stop. And it got to the point where my sisters had come to join me at my uncle's. They took away my phone and they kind of like would put me on bed rest, and like physically someone would put me to sleep and like would force me to eat and would put away my phone. And I know they did so much for me, but in those moments I didn't care about anything. I just needed to find them. And I remember my uncle, after 2 or 3 days, he kind of grabbed me and he looked at me and he said, Ella, I need you to listen to me. And I need you to really comprehend what I'm about to say. And he said, you need to pray that your friends are dead and that they're not kidnapped. It's that or that. And he was like, I need you to understand the situation. And I lost it. I couldn't. That sentence shattered my soul. I could not accept it. I'm a very believing person. I couldn't accept it. And that sentence really, really, really just like shot through my chest, destroyed me, hit me very, very hard. And later that day was when I kind of started getting, um, I started getting the message from people that their bodies were found. And it was kind of 2, 3 days of, another friend found, another friend found, another friend found. Um, I remember the first friend I found out about was Ben Mizrahi, who is a very good friend of mine from my trip in South America, and he's actually also Canadian. He grew up in Vancouver, and he also moved to Israel as a lone soldier. And we bonded in Colombia in our trip, and I hadn't seen him at the festival, but later I got word that he actually stayed back to rescue and help other people, and that's when he died. He was a medic in the military, and so he stayed back and helped people who were injured, which is very doesn't surprise me in the least because that's the type of person he was. And when I found out about him, I think all the emotions I kind of numbed and put aside, everything just shot out of me. Um, I had never experienced that much pain, like inner, outer body, emotional, from my soul pain in my life. And I've lost people before in my life, but this was different. And when I found out about him, it was my sister. She sat me down and she told me, and not even 5 minutes later, I got a call that they found Gili's body as well. And so that was a very traumatic experience in its own, finding out about two of my friends less than 5 minutes apart. I actually had to choose between funerals because a lot of the funerals, fell at the same time on the same day. And it's a terrible feeling. It's a terrible feeling that I really can't sum up in words, having to choose between your friends' funerals. Um, and it was a very, very, very dark time. It was very hard. And that's kind of why I call it the morning after, because I just lost all sense of, time of I was very much, I was alive, but I was dead alive. It took me a while to kind of let everything sink in. And that's kind of where, the healing journey began from
So
there.
before we go into the healing journey, I just want to post this picture of five of your friends. The other friend whom we spoke of before, we will post that at the
Gili
top of this interview. So, Ben Mizrahi, you discussed. Can you just tell us one or two sentences about each one of these people, their character, their personalities, what you loved about them?
So yeah, of course. So Ben, first of all, as I said, he's just full of heart. He kind of adopted me, him and Roya, actually, Roya Mansouri, who is in the photo next to Ben. I met them both in the same week in Colombia, and it was my birthday. And I arrived to this island alone, and I didn't know anyone. And I remember I was so upset, like thinking, oh, I'm gonna do my birthday. This is how I'm gonna do it by myself. And the minute I met both of them, it was just this beautiful bond. I felt like we became this little family and they really took me in. And that was one of the best, best weeks, not just on my trip, I think of my life. I met incredible people and our friendship kind of blossomed from there. And, it's crazy that I actually met both of these angels on the same day. And they're forever a part of me. And Roya, I continued. I met up with her later on my trip as well, and I remember she had such a great time, but she missed her family a lot. She's very, very close to her mom, and on October 7th, Roya and her sister, Norel, and Norel's boyfriend, they were all murdered. Um, and it's a very, very devastating loss. Uh, she was such a light, just a fairy, the best word I could use for her. And I can feel the impact that, they leave on everyone that gets to experience them now, even people who maybe didn't know them and are only meeting them through these stories now, but the impact is incredible. Ron Shemer, he is a friend that I also, I met in my travels, and we actually kind of forgot we met each other. And a week before the Nova Festival, I ended up, meeting up with him in Tel Aviv because he was meeting up with a friend of mine that I was with at the time. We actually ended up sitting for hours, kind of talking about life, about everything. And he was telling me stories. And I kind of realized, hey, I told him, Ron, like, I think we had this conversation before. And it hit both of us that we had already met multiple times on the trip. And we kind of like, it was just this deja vu moment where, like, how did we forget that we've seen each other so many times?
Yeah.
And it was insane. And yeah, I remember he, told me he was going to the festival, and I told him as well. And we kind of said we would touch base and meet up there. And I did see him at the festival. At the start, we hugged and we talked, and I didn't see him, later on that night. Um, and that was also, a very scary situation of, why did God, let us meet again after all this time, a week before, in the last week of his life? Like, why did that happen? It's these chilling thoughts that kind of stay with you, and it's very, very hard. Um, Tchelet, I have to say, I had not seen Tchelet in years, but Tchelet was actually my my ex that I met in during Garin Savar. We lived in the same kibbutz, and we each got adoptive families, and Tchelet's family was his adoptive family. And so they kind of took me in as well, and I would come with him, to Shabbat dinners and to sit with them for coffee, and we would just spend a lot of time with them because we all lived, in the same kibbutz. And she was just a beautiful, beautiful girl, full of light, um, such a beautiful soul. And I had found out later she wasn't at the Nova Festival, but she actually had just moved to Barrie with her boyfriend a month, I think, before October 7th. They moved in together. It was like a big, beautiful step. And, she was just a child. Um, and and later we got word that she was murdered in their home in Be'eri, and it tore me apart. It was very, very, very hard. I touched base with her family, and they meant a lot to me in such significant moments of my life here in Israel, and it was a lot of pain to process at once. And Avraham Avraham Tibel, he was Gili's best friend. They were the most beautiful duo you had ever seen. I met Avlam on my trip multiple times. Through my friendship with Gili, I kind of became friends with both of them. And, when they were together, it was like sitting back and watching just like this comic duo just brighten up everyone's life around them. They
Mhm.
had a really, really special bond, and they were together until their very, last moments. Um, and it's very hard. It's very hard to kind of think of all of the people lost, all of the memories left to have been made. And I'll just touch on this because I think this is one of the things I've kind of spoke about a lot also during each one of my speeches and testimonies and interviews I had done. I think that when something so catastrophic happens and there is so much loss, we tend to talk about it in numbers, statistics. And at the end of the day, before each one of these people decided to come for this one random night to this festival, they were people with entire lives, entire personalities, friends, families, purpose, dreams and hopes and talents. And this was one night out of a whole life that they lived. And the last thing I want to feel is that because this happened the way that it did, that they will be spoken about as a statistic or as a number, because these are real people who had such a big impact on everyone they touched, and they continue to have an impact even on people that weren't lucky enough to meet them. And that is something that is really important for me to say. You know, it would mean so much if people really understood that this isn't just, you know, something you read about, like something that happened in history years ago. No, this happened now. I don't want them to be remembered as, you know, out of the 300 something victims, I want them to be remembered for who they were, and not just for how they went. And that's something that I'm going to continue to kind of bring forth, you know, as long as I'm here to do that. And it would mean a lot for people, you know, to check out a little bit about them, you know, in these barcodes, or even look them up online and kind of get a feeling of who my beautiful friends were. And you know, it's very painful, but I definitely I feel them with me. Um, I definitely feel them around me and with me in many moments since. And it gives me a lot of strength, and puts a lot of things in proportion when things get hard.
Have you dreamed about any of them?
Yeah, wow, for sure. I've had some very surreal dreams. I've had a lot of outer body experiences as well that I can tell you. You know, part of the world of therapy, which we'll touch on in a second. But I turn to a lot of holistic and alternative therapy methods, as well as rebirthing, and kind of, you know, where you close your eyes and you're taken through kind of like a, um, I'm blanking on the word in English, but you know, it's kind of like me- mindfulness and meditations, and purposely bringing your subconscious to a certain place. And I've done that a few times in the last 2 years. It's something that helped me a lot. And I saw them not just once, in a lot of those moments. When I say saw them, it's very freaky, but saw them, you know, physically felt them, felt their touch on my hand, had conversations, um, saw them in little moments, you know, even if it wasn't in a, you know, vivid dream, um, but in little signs from the universe that kind of meet me on my day to day schedule in life. And, you know, I'm aware that maybe a lot of it is psychological, a lot of it is belief, a lot of it can be real. I kind of believe in everything.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the nice thing, that I'm also able to accept when I do get those little moments of, you know, this butterfly landing on me and the sun suddenly shining, or me having a really bad day, and then out of all the stickers and places and things, I end up sitting exactly on a bench where Gili's sticker was put. And you know, little moments like that that really send chills through my body, but they give me that that like very real reminder and hug that I need a lot of the time. And it's hauntingly beautiful, you could say.
You know, there's a lot of discussion about the beauty of the people who were at the festival, and of course, those who perished. And I was wondering to myself, how can there be so many beautiful people at a given environment? And then I did some research into the festival itself, and I see that the people who go to those festivals are very much into mindfulness. They're very much into meditation. They're very much into beauty. They're kind of a progressive form of what we would have called hippies in the 60s, you know? One of the women who was responsible for the music at the festival, she said every single person I lost in that day would have made the hell out of this life. In other words, would have celebrated this life without barriers, without borders. She said, wherever they are now, she goes, I just hope that they're parting. And that was a significant statement. And I heard this from so many people. Did you feel guilty about surviving?
100%. That was probably the strongest emotion that took over at the start. You know, survivor's guilt is a very real thing. But I think I more so felt even participants' guilt, and I'll explain. Um, you know, obviously things happen that are bigger than us, and like logically on paper, I understand it's not my fault. I understand I couldn't have done anything different. Um, I know that this was a situation that was bigger than me. However, um, you know, a lot of times you feel guilt in the sense of, why them and why me? Like, why did I survive and why did they not? Because like you said, that woman said, each one of these people and the many other people lost, like you'll see a reoccurring thing that people say, these are people of light, these are people who did so much good, these are like, they were angels on earth and now they're angels in heaven. And it's sometimes, people say the little sentences of, God takes the good ones to keep them close to him, or everything happens for a reason. But these sentences, they're just sentences sometimes, unless you dig deeper and you find your own personal understanding of what that means to you. And I can tell you that for me, what ended up happening was October 7th was kind of like the last straw, kind of like the thing that burst open a Pandora's box of unprocessed trauma, of 23 years of life, of things I had gone through that even if I thought I had processed or given, healed from, I realized now very much that I hadn't. And it kind of felt like my entire life, my every single experience I went to, trauma, loss, uncomfortable situation, heartache, heartbreak, everything kind of came out at once like this, like in my face. And it was this very scary feeling where I was suddenly remembering details from things that had happened, at age 4, at age 12, at age 16, all while trying to still process something that, happened right now, the atrocities of the 7th. And I kind of felt like almost like this system overload, kind of like a computer when you put too much stuff on it and you don't clear the storage and it heats up until it explodes. That I felt like I was waiting for the second that the explosion was just going to happen because I couldn't bear it. It was as if someone took me and just gave me all of the most difficult emotions on the human spectrum all at once, whether that be pain, grief, regret, loss, guilt, shame, imposter syndrome, which was a big thing I felt. And I'm just going to touch on that for a second to kind of put that together with the participants' guilt. Um, I have always had a tendency, I'm very self aware, which is a good thing, but it can also be a very troubling thing because it means that your mind doesn't rest. You're constantly working on yourself all the time, analyzing yourself,
Yeah.
overthinking.
Thank you.
And I have always had this tendency to kind of belittle my wins and successes, but also belittle my pain. It was almost as if I had lived with this abusive relationship within myself where anything that had happened to me in my life, I wouldn't actually feel. I would almost use the intellectualizing of it as a way to procrastinate the feeling of it. Like, I'm always going to take it to a place of growth. I'm going to take it to a place of like reflecting. You can't reflect without feeling. And that's something I never ever let myself understand. And that was like a very hard slap in the face I got after the 7th, where, I went from what was the most euphoric, out of body type of experience year of my life with my South America trip, to the bottom of the bottom. It was like the distance between where I was and where I fell was so grand, you felt it. And I remember, as someone that kind of has a tendency to belittle my pain, I always look for reasons why I don't deserve, the praise I get, or why I don't deserve to feel the pain I feel, or, anytime I feel a little bit of sadness, automatically it's like I'm like hitting myself inside and saying, stop being a victim. People have it way worse. And as a child, growing up with myself as like my own abuser, it was a very, very hard thing to realize in the here and now. And I felt at the start, when I was processing everything, that one of the things I felt the most was this guilt of, I don't feel like I even have a voice here and like I have the right to speak because technically I had an easy escape. I didn't get shot. I didn't get raped. I didn't see things. Even the things I saw, I didn't realize they were what they were until later. I managed to get out with the car. I didn't have to physically go through the feeling of seeing bullets flying over my head and missing me by a second, and seeing people fall down around me and running for my life physically. And I remembered those were feelings where I felt like, why would anyone want to hear my voice? Why should I even take up space as a survivor to talk about my trauma? And I kind of beat up myself about that for a very, very, very long time. And it was something that, would come about in nightmares, in daydreams, horrific things, almost like my brain was trying to overcompensate for the things the fact that my escape was, again, I say easy like this because nowadays I know that this was just destructive thoughts and intrusive thoughts that typical Ella was used to giving herself. But you have this with a situation that isn't like, a normative situation you go through in your life. Like, this is a very, very severe situation. And so the guilt, the pain, everything is amplified. And I I felt that I felt like I couldn't speak, like I didn't have the right to. And I remember that was kind of one of the things that I talked about a lot with therapists at the start. And, one therapist kind of said to me, Ella, let's say you know, you broke your arm and your friend just broke both of his legs. Are you going to compare the two? Yeah, maybe you think his situation is harder, but one comparison is it's not just the thief of joy, it's the cause of a lot of pain. And one person's pain doesn't take away from the others. And she kind of said to me, think about it neutrally. Okay, he lost two legs and he needs to learn how to walk and function without the two legs. But you lost an arm. Do you need to learn how to do things now without an arm? Factually, do you need to learn how to live with the circumstances that you experienced? And the answer is yes. And suddenly, when I kind of took it to this neutral understanding and not kind of like my own, belittling myself that I was used to do, I kind of realized, not only is every single person's journey and escape story a part of a bigger story that kind of has to do with everything that was in us before this day, our characteristics, our personalities, our weakness points. I think, and I think a lot of survivors that I've spoken to kind of say that, everything they went through that day was kind of like a mirror of a lot of things that they were facing in their lives before. And all of this kind of came about in this one moment, one situation. And so I think it's almost ironic how, for someone who tends to never accept her pain and always feel like I'm not doing enough and always feel like even if I had gotten shot, I know myself, that still wouldn't have been enough for me because I would have said, well, he got shot twice. And so I can't win with Ella. And that was kind of like this moment where I looked at myself and I was like, I can't win with you because you are always going to look for why you deserve something less and why your pain is not legitimate and why you need to be stronger and why you should feel guilty. And that was kind of when I started looking very, very deeply at young Ella and kind of looking at her from a point of view of not her, abuser. I know that's also a very hard word, but I'm using it on purpose because it is the amount of pain it felt like that. Suddenly I was looking at her, and when I was replaying all, the every single event of my life and thing I went through, I realized that the common denominator in all of them was that I was so awful to myself. I was such a terrible, terrible enemy to myself. I was not a friend to myself. And I have grown so much since then, even before the seventh, but much so, afterwards, that I'm finally at a point through a lot of work that when I look at that little Ella, there is no judgment. Seriously, all I want to do, and I am getting chills when I say this because I see it, I envision it. I want to hug her and I just want to say, I'm sorry and that I love you and you're doing so good and I'm so proud of you and you're such a good person and you have such a beautiful heart. And I'm sorry that I didn't see you. And I'm sorry that I put you on mute. all these years, and I'm sorry that I didn't give you, that best friend when I could have been that for you, but now it ends. And now I'm here and I'm with you and I'm taking your hand and we're going through this together. And those moments, like those really ugly crying on the floor, looking at myself, apologizing deeply um, for neglecting that little girl, that's what helped me kind of pick myself up in the here and now, and every single hardship I'm facing in my healing journey since the 7th, I feel like I'm not alone, because alongside my beautiful community and my friends and family and everyone that's, the person who's shown up that I had never had shown up before is Ella. And I feel her presence. I feel my presence. And I think that's probably my biggest win out of all of this, is that I get to a point where I genuinely I love myself today, and I am my best friend, and I'm not just saying these pretty words. I feel it in my soul. Um, and yeah, and it's a crazy journey. I never thought I would actually be at the point where I could say these words out loud, let alone that these words would help me see the world in a different way than what I had seen, and help others through sharing this, people that maybe feel the same, relate on the deepest levels of it. Um, yeah.
You're magnificent, Ella. You're magnificent.
Thank you.
Yeah, you really are. I obviously I'm not happy with what you've gone through and so many others, but the outcome of it is it's like my sister Javi. Her husband was murdered one Motzei Shabbat after Shabbat, and she was left to raise 6 kids. And she promptly said to herself, "I'm going to go into therapy not just for me, but for my children." And she did, and she made sure that they were well taken care of by many therapeutic professionals in many environments, art therapy, etc. And thank God she's today, 20, 22 years later, just a beautiful, beautiful person, beautiful soul. And her kids, Baruch Hashem, they all have their challenges because their father was murdered, but they really have grown and they have done beautifully for themselves. Life is crazy, isn't it, Ella? You go through like this level of shit, and this is where we are today. It's crazy, isn't it?
It is. And I want to say, first of all, I'm really sorry for your loss and for her
Thank,
loss.
thank you.
And it does warm my heart to hear that she is taking care of her, taking care of her kids, and that she's in a place now where, the pain is never going to go away. When people say that, it's bullshit. Time heals, but it heals because you gain experiences and understandings with yourself that allow you to add more emotions to that spectrum, and it's not just the pain. That's truly what I believe. The grief and the pain, it doesn't go away. But a lot of good adds on to that. And I'll say the sentence that, I kind of carry it with me all the time, and I use this every time I finished off one of my testimonies, because my friend told me this and I thought it was so beautiful. I was having a really bad day and I was kind of sobbing, and she grabbed me and she looked at me and she quoted this quote, and she said, "Ella, sometimes it feels like we've been buried when in fact we've just been planted." And that hits so deep because it's so true. Um, healing is, I hate to break it, it does not feel good half the time. Doing what's good for you and right for you, and rediscovering yourself, it's not always going to feel good. And a lot of times it feels genuinely like we've been buried, like you're suffocating, you can't breathe, you everything is dark, there's no light. But evidently, it's once you go through that and you grow through that, that you can look back and say, no one was burying me, they were planting me. I see
Yeah.
me reaping those fruits, and it's a beautiful feeling to be able to find space in your conscious, in your mind, in your heart for both, to understand that two things can exist at once. You know, you can be really happy for the things you learned from the pain you went through, but you can also still be very much depressed. You can be grieving, but you can also want to go out to a party and smile. You can, I genuinely, you know, have never been a person that's seen things as black and white. It's very, very much, and I think that's life. It's accepting that there isn't one truth and there isn't one way, but that there, without light, there can't be dark, and without good, there can't be bad. And, you know, everything kind of has to have, if one thing exists, the other spectrum of it has to. And sometimes those things will happen at once and it's not going to be linear. And I think that's where you kind of get the most relief, is when you let yourself feel and you let yourself accept these things and you're very true with yourself. As hard as that is, because it has to hurt before it gets better. And I am very much a living living example of
Oh,
that.
God, I thank you
Um,
for doing this. Thank you. You know, we
thank
were
you.
gonna. Oh, I feel honestly, I feel love for you. I really do.
Thank you.
I
I may say that to everyone. You have to, but it's
I
okay.
do.
I'll take it.
I feel a lot of love for people. It's true, but I feel like this was really an intimate interview, and I feel for you. I feel for everybody who was at the Nova Festival, everybody who was affected on October 7th and afterward. And I'm a Jew first and foremost, and that plays into it in a very big way. You know, one of the things we were going to talk about more intensely was the therapeutic tools that were put into place, and there were many, many, many. As an example, the Nova Tribe Community Association programs, the Free Spirit Experience Trauma Recovery Program, a center that was started in Thailand for Israelis to go to and to rehab. Hagal Shali, my wave therapeutic surfing program. The list goes on and on and on. There's much to say about it. Art therapy, mindfulness, and all of that which you've gone through. But I think you alluded to the effects of it, and I think for now that suffices. And I would have to say, kol hakavod to the Israeli therapists who have the awareness of what was needed after that trauma. And certainly Israelis are not strangers to trauma, but this was a particular type of trauma. It was young people. You know, it was going, like you said, 6:28 in the morning. People were dancing. They were free as judgment, as one participant said. He said, "You let your judgment go. You love everybody. There's dancing, but the dancing is not like individuals dancing. It becomes this big collective." And then 6:29 comes, and this trauma sets in. So kol hakavod to the Israelis, to the Israeli community, to you, to all of your colleagues, to all of your friends, all of the people who went through these programs and continue to, because I guess that's the message of this interview is you go through trauma, try to find a way through it. And there are ways through it, right, Ella?
Yeah, there is a very, very, very big impact, and beautiful understanding to the whole ripple effect. And you know, sometimes it's like we're hardest on ourselves. It's the same thing. You know, it's much easier for me to help someone else than to help myself. And so when you suddenly have a whole country, community, even from around the world, not just physically here in Israel, um, doing even the littlest bit to feel like they're helping someone else, it kind of creates this giant ripple effect that I don't think people were even aware of, you know, when this was starting. This was very much like a instinctive thing. Let's help whoever we can. Let's, you know, and it created something so much bigger than us that I think everyone is very much in awe of. And it allowed each one of us, I think, through helping others, help ourselves too. And so it's kind of this loop where you're getting and you're giving and you're receiving, and you know, it's insane. It's insane. And I feel a lot of gratitude. It's definitely an emotion that was hard to find at the start, but now I consciously, you know, make time every day to give space to that gratitude, because when you give yourself a second to think about it, you genuinely realize how much you have to be thankful for, and how incredible this world can be, and how beautiful this world can be. And I hope that that's something that just continues to grow, and I hope that the rest of the world um, finds a way to relate to the human of it all, um, and to kind of each person kind of take a look with themselves and see, where in their personal life and story they find the relation, because I think through that feeling, that's kind of how we strip down the judgments, the masks, the things that kind of we've been taught to believe, and we're able to see someone, for their soul, for who they are. And it's so important, especially, in the time that we're in right now with everything we're facing all around us. And so I think this means way more to me than I've told you, and that I think you understand, because my voice is here, and it's here to be heard. But being able to, the fact that you came and reached out to me because something that I said touched you, and now I'm able to come and speak with you again, and maybe someone will watch this at home. It doesn't matter, Jewish, not Jewish, how old they are, where they are in the world. If it does something, if it helps in even the tiniest way, we're part of a ripple effect right now that we don't even see, and we might not even see the outcome of it, but it just goes to show that things are happening, and it might not always be seen to your eye, but it's felt to the other side. And it's a beautiful feeling to be a part of, and I appreciate the opportunity to even do this so much. So
We're so
thank
lucky,
you.
Ella. We're so lucky to have you. We're so lucky to have you. And you know who I'm most happy for? Your parents.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm a parent, and you could have been a mess. Chas v'chalila, you could have been a mess. And when parents have to deal with that, and I'm sure your parents dealt with a lot, but to see what an extraordinary human being you are, and how you maximized trauma and turned it into redemption almost for yourself and for the people around you, I can't tell you. I can't tell you how your parents are feeling. I can't tell you the satisfaction they have knowing the daughter that they raised. You're magnificent. You really are.
Thank you.
I want to read a poem, another poem to you. It's called Ode to Ella, and
Oh,
yeah, it's an AI poem, and it goes like this. Did you do you play with AI at all?
sometimes, yeah, it's
Yeah.
fun.
Okay, good. Good. Good.
Mainly
Good.
when like things are broken in my house, and I'm like,
Okay.
how do I
Good.
fix this?
In lands where maple meets the olive tree, Maple, Canada, olive tree, Israel. Ela Levgoren, brave at 23, from Canada's calm to Israel's call, a lone soldier stood resolute and tall. At 18, she crossed the seas alone, combat engineer, her heart a stone, instructing strength with steady hand. She carved her place in a foreign land. October 7th, 2023, the Nova Festival where hearts were free, yet joy turned ash in a brutal tide as terror struck and friends fell by her side. 6 souls lost, their laughter stilled, 44 taken, their fates unfulfilled. Ella fled with 4 who clung to life, wounded, scared, through chaos and strife. But from the ashes she rose anew, a voice for the silent, her purpose true. With every step she honors the gone, her spirit a flame that forever burns on. No mere survivor, but a beacon of light. Ella transformed the darkest of nights. Through trauma's weight she finds her way, renewing hope with each breaking day. O Ella, your courage a song to inspire, a testament forged in the heart of the fire. In grief's deep shadow, your spirit ascends, a guide for us all where the human heart mends.
I'm emotional. That was beautiful. Thank you.
I'll send it to you.
Wow. That was I've never cried from AI before. That was, I
Likely not
needed
the
that.
last time. I just want to
Thank
say
you
to
so
you that
much.
you really did a terrific job. You really did. I think this is going to be a very much sought after interview because your level of maturity, your level of rehabilitation, what you've gone through, is so incredibly great, and the wisdom that you impart or that you have imparted through this interview is something that me at 65, I listened very closely to what you had to say. And I'm going to incorporate a lot of what you had to say. The ideas that all this trauma that I grew up with I thought that I had dealt with much of it. Now I'm wondering. I'm wondering, you know, and what do I need to do in order to see myself, as you said, to be very honest with myself, to be very authentic, like you have been with yourself. Are you now 25?
I am, yeah.
Yeah. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
And to your friends who you lost, I want to say Yid Gadal v'Yikadash Shmei Rabbah v'Yama Divara Charute v'Yamlich Malchute v'Chayechon v'Yimechon v'Chay Dechal Beit Yisrael v'Agalav Zman Kariv v'Yimru Amen. That they should rest in peace. That
Thank
you were
you.
lucky to have them as friends, and they were lucky to have you. And no doubt, my father used to say of blessed memory. He said the way to remember people is by taking their greatest gift, taking their greatest talent, and incorporating it into your life. So you talked about Avraham, right? That he was inseparable to his friend, It's the idea that his loyalty as a friend, the goodness that he must have given, that they must have given to each other, take that into yourself and be the best friend you can. So I want to
Thank
conclude and just say thank you so much. You taught me a lot, and I'm so happy that you're part of our team.
Me
Part of the
too.
Jewish people. Yeah, yeah, you're really wonderful.
This was very beautiful,
Thank
and
you.
it gave me a lot.
Thank you. Any closing words for our viewers and listeners? Just in conclusion, a synopsis.
It's so hard. I talked so much. How do I conclude it? I think
Trauma.
I
Let's
think the moment, like I said, I've already said the sentence, um, and I think I kind of play off on it that don't be afraid of yourself. Don't be afraid to kind of sit down and be honest with yourself and let yourself feel. Um, these are things that are an inseparable part of truly, truly healing. Um, and kind of to actually feel free, you have to first kind of see within yourself, where am I actually the one, that was keeping myself chained up. And that's a very like general thing to say, but I think that sometimes we wait for life for things outside of us to happen, because that kind of gives us, that slap in the face and kind of makes us see all these things. But I can genuinely tell you that this is something I'm going to kind of tell whoever I can. It doesn't have to be like that. I think that you'll realize that there's no one in the world who is for you and knows you best and will be with you until the end, like you're like yourself. And so I think if I had realized that sooner, I would have saved myself a lot of pain, but I don't regret it because look at where I am now. And so I guess just inspire, be be as sweet to yourself as you would to the friend that you
Yes,
comfort.
that's right. Yes,
Um, and and yeah, and thank you for, for also for speaking about my friends, for carrying their light. Like you said, I think, why does it hurt so bad? Because we loved so much, which just goes to show, I would rather love and have my heart break, because that means that something touched my heart to so much to the point that in its loss, I feel its absence. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think everyone has that person or that thing or that purpose in their life. And yeah, I think I said a lot, but I hope each one takes whatever they took from this. It doesn't have to be the same thing. That's also the beauty of it.
good to you.
And I hope this ripple effect continues. I'm sure that it will. And thank you for everything that you're doing to make it happen.
You're welcome. Thank you, Ella. Folks, I want to thank everybody for watching and for listening. I would ask you from the depths of my heart, please share this interview with others, because I think it in itself is therapeutic, and it's a form of rehab for all of us. And we all need, in this world that we live in, we all need some form of rehabilitation today. And I believe that this interview is a great way of finding yourself, finding your freedom, as Ella said. So until we meet again, as they say in Yiddish, sei gesund, which means go in good health. And thank you so much to my guest, to my friend, Ela Levgoren, for doing this. Ella, you did a marvelous job.
Thank you.
Thank you.